Hey YouTube, I'm Jessie, and not too long ago on this channel here, we did a video on the SKS, so of course it was only appropriate to swap sides in the war. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want no teenage queen. Me? Well, I just want my M14.
I just want my M14!
I guess M1A. With me here today, I have the Springfield M1A Scout Squad rifle. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and a special thank you to my friend Forrest who did let me borrow this. So I feel like the GI version of Dark Helmet right now. This thing is huge, bear with me, but let's get going. This gun here was used as the primary infantry weapon during the Vietnam War from about 1957 to 67, in which it was very quickly replaced by the M16. And despite how ridiculously long this rifle is, it actually has one of the shortest lifespans for any US military service weapon. Poor thing was not well appreciated. Maybe if I had a 1911, but with this thing, screw that. But the change to it actually was driven largely because of the changing ammo needs and designs. The M1 Garand obviously used the 30-06, but 7.62 NATO was becoming increasingly pushed for. And then probably more importantly, we started to see detachable magazines, which is a huge game changer. So the design for the M14 was pushed largely off of the idea that you could use the already existing M1 manufacturing lines. So this would be readily producible and minimal costs. It was later determined that was a lie.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
This thing had a nightmare of technical and financial issues in terms of getting it out the door and performance. She's 2 pounds heavier than her predecessor, which doesn't help. To anyone who used this thing in full auto, it was considered pretty much impossible to control. So hate for it kind of seems a little justified, but to be fair, there was a lot of factors that predisposed people to disliking it before it even hit the field. So the M1A, the civilian version that I have here, is virtually identical to the M14. I mean, hell, even the names are same. That A in Leap Speak becomes a 4. But really the only differences are that the M14 is going to have a milled receiver cut for full auto. You're not going to see the pick rail here on it. The M14 is actually about 4 inches larger. This is the Scout Squad version, but that's gonna put it at a hefty 22-inch barrel, or a total of a 44-inch long gun. The M1A here that I'm holding is gonna wind up being an 18-inch barrel, coming into a total of 40 inches, which is significant. The M1A is actually going to be a little bit larger than the Garand that it was meant to replace. Interjection from future me here, I'm about 40 rounds into filming with this. The pick rail up here is absurdly hot. I've grazed it a few times and my fingers are toasty. So the M14s were drop forged, but the M1As here are going to use a precision casting system. And another difference you can note is that there is an integrated muzzle brake up here in the front, which is going to make things less than fun to take off and change, but one benefit, I guess, is that it's going to help with some of that barrel climb, might give some better control depending how comfortable you are using certain rifles. Another thing to consider if you're looking into getting the M1A is that evidently the op rods might not like spicy loads a little bit. This isn't mine, I'm not testing it. For this video though, I am shooting the PMC 147 grain 308, which is going to be considered a softer load, but there's people on the internet that will tell you that something that's a spicier round, a hotter round, could wind up bending the op rod. Not testing that. But another thing to consider too is maybe the use of silencers at that point, because it's going to redirect the gas and change the way it's being pressured and heated. That also might bend the op rod. In theory, maybe, I guess, if you have a flow-through can, that might help mitigate that issue. If you guys have any experience with this, let me know in the comments, because I would love to hear more about actual anecdotal evidence. Hopefully not too many trauma stories. So in a civilian sense, modern day, I mean, this was fun to shoot. It was good to take out on the range, not gonna complain there. But a lot of the modern dislike towards it stems from beliefs that came out of the Vietnam War. people without even having tried them, which is fair. All right, so I'm not entirely stupid here. The reason that this isn't loading with the stripper clip right now is if you see the bolt is not locking entirely back. So the stripper clip is actually getting locked, stuck on the bolt, not allowing me to engage it in. Yeah, so you can see I have to pull that, reset, and there we go. Now I can start getting rounds in at that point. I don't know why it was doing that. I was laying prone, but I didn't have any pressure on like the mag or anything. I had it lifted off, so it wasn't like I was, you know, putting inappropriate pressure in weird spots that maybe didn't let it go into battery properly, but dealing with it. Now I'm gonna have to fix it by pulling that back. All right, so I keep having the issue with the bolt not going back all the way. So just to show that I'm not doing something particularly dumb, I do have 3 different mags here. I have all of them with 1 round in it, and we're just gonna see how it looks firing between each of those. If maybe there's a mag issue, ammo issue, I doubt, maybe, but we're gonna try it out. So obviously that worked, which is good news. I don't know entirely what happened, but I could imagine, because I did take a shot before this with just the regular mags and the bolt did not go all the way back. But on those ones, it was obviously successful. So it does have a really large entry here. I'm wondering if while I was prone, something was able to get in, get trapped, gunk it up a little bit. And after a couple of rounds, it shook it out and was able to start functioning properly again. Something to note, something that I went through. Thought you guys might find it interesting. So the system was intended to replace the M1 Garand, but also the whole fleet, which meant that this gun was designed to do a lot of great things really crappily. We can't expect one rifle to cover every single role. And it just set it up for failure before it even hit the field. So the results for that is you wound up with a gun that was average at best at a lot of things, but great at nothing. And the needs for the soldiers were changing during the Vietnam War, and this gun was just not capable of meeting it for them. And then another reason that there was a lot of hate even before it hit the field was the idea that the selection process might have been a little rigged against something like the AR-10 or the FAL, especially because of the whole not from here kind of belief system, which might have cost, you know, a potential good firearm and potential change in the outcome of the war. But even after the adoption of the M16, you still actually had a lot of soldiers that were trying to cling desperately onto their M14s, despite how bad they were initially received. In the M16's defense, though, there are a lot of issues such as the ammo not being done properly to spec requirements, which of course is going to cause performance and many malfunctions. But who knows what was going on in the minds of the soldiers at that time. No matter which way you cut it, they weren't happy with this rifle. And honestly, considering how heavy and cumbersome it is, I don't blame them. You add 4 inches to the end of this, and I cannot imagine trying to finagle through the jungle and through all of the heavy bush and leaves and vines with something that's large, that heavy. Props to all of the veterans who served through that, because it's not an easy task. I had a hard time with this even running through here, and I don't have the added stresses of war and hunger and everything else that these poor people were going through to actually make that situation that much more difficult. Everyone I know who's in the service, they wind up stripping their guns down to as bare bones as they're allowed to reduce weight, try to keep things as light and compact. So I completely understand not being happy when this gets handed to you. But to be fair, something like the FAL, that's also pretty heavy and cumbersome. So I don't think that would have been the solution people like to think it is nowadays. So like I said, for me, this was fun to shoot with, but I have shot a lot of the other firearms that I've mentioned in this video, the Garand, the FAL, AR-10. And I do find this one to be the least ergonomic, although I will say if you're left-handed, you might have a preference for this. To give the M14 or the M1A some love though, I do actually find the sights to be quite enjoyable to look through. My personal opinion, they help guide the eye very well without obstructing anything. And the trigger here is actually remarkably nice. If you guys watched my SKS video, then I'm sure you saw me struggling with these stripper clips. One thing I will give this gun is that it is significantly easier to put them in. Past that first one, they really just glide. Not bad. So one thing to note about these mags is they're actually somehow a worse rock and lock. You can see here that there's that nice little insert that you kind of have to line up. So it's almost like a two-stage. You have to connect it in here and then push it into the back so it seats fully, which definitely weird to get used to. You figure it out though, like anything else. I'm weak, so this thing was front heavy for me, especially if you add on that additional 4 inches. And another benefit of something like the FAL, they have the pistol grip, which I do think is going to do wonders in terms of control. So added bonus on that regard. But as a modern rifle, it's really the price that's what's killing it for me. If these things were a little bit more affordable, I'd say, yeah, they're fun. Nothing against going out and getting one. But I do believe that for the cost that these are currently running out, you can get a lot better things to play around with. A lot better like historic things if that's what you're into, kind of fit the look for a way cheaper cost. Realistically, on paper, I think any of the weapons that were kind of listed today are gonna give the same kind of theoretical performance. And I mean like mounted up, no outside conditions, same ammo capabilities, but in a realistic sense, probably towards the bottom of the list in my opinion. It doesn't help that there are a lot of delusions from the people higher up who are making these design decisions and implementation decisions. I think you wind up failing when you decide that you want to have one gun to do it all, especially for like a very active, very trying military in a not understood scenario. Vietnam War is obviously a very different war than what was seen before. So it would make sense to try and specialize considering the varying and unknown conditions that your people are being sent out into. If you're using this now, you can probably get a pretty good M1A if you're using something like match grade ammo or if you're loading your own, but not gonna be in my arsenal anytime soon. That's really all I had for you guys today. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you guys next time on the channel. Let me know down below if there's other things that you want to see covered here. Thanks, guys. Oh, oh my goodness. Good job.